The coldest winter your ancestors ever faced has no name. No one wrote it down. No one measured its temperature. No one remembered the exact year it arrived. But somewhere between 20 and 30,000 years ago, winter spread across the northern half of the world with a cruelty almost impossible to imagine. Rivers became walls of ice. Forests fell silent. Entire landscapes disappeared beneath snow that would not melt for months. By the time spring finally returned, countless people were simply gone. The strange part is that you are not descended from them. You are descended from the few who somehow survived. That single fact makes you one of the luckiest people who has ever lived. Because every generation before you faced the same impossible question. How do you stay alive when the world itself seems determined to freeze you out? The answer wasn't strength. It wasn't courage. And it certainly wasn't luck. It was thousands of small decisions, repeated over thousands of winters, by ordinary people who refused to let the cold have the final word. Today, winter is an inconvenience. You complain about scraping ice from a windshield, waiting for the heater to warm up, or walking a few minutes through freezing air. If the weather becomes too dangerous, you stay indoors. Warmth is only a switch away. Your ancestors lived in a world where no switch existed. When the temperature dropped, there was nowhere to escape. Nature didn't care how intelligent you were. It only cared whether you had prepared. This wasn't the winter you know today. Earth was locked in the last glacial maximum, the coldest chapter of the last ice age. Massive sheets of ice covered huge parts of Europe, Asia, and North America. Sea levels were lower. The climate was harsher. Even regions far from the glaciers experienced long, brutal winters that transformed familiar landscapes into frozen wilderness. But here's something most people never realize. The cold itself wasn't the first thing trying to kill you. It was time. Winter arrived slowly. At first, the mornings became colder. Then, the leaves disappeared. Rivers began freezing around their edges. The animals that had filled the valleys all summer quietly vanished, following ancient migration routes toward places with food. Every passing week stole something from the landscape. Less daylight, less warmth, less food, less hope. Your ancestors understood something modern people rarely think about. By the time the first snow arrived, it was already too late to prepare. Winter was won months before winter ever began. Long before the air turned deadly, families were already gathering firewood, drying meat, scraping animal hides, repairing tools, and memorizing the movements of migrating herds. Every task seemed ordinary while the sun was still warm. Only later did those ordinary tasks reveal themselves as the difference between life and death. Because winter never announced its arrival with a single storm. It arrived one missing meal at a time. One frozen stream at a time, one empty hunting ground at a time. And once those signs appeared, the countdown had already begun. The first real enemy wasn't the cold. It was hunger. Your body is an extraordinary machine, but it has one unforgiving weakness. Staying warm costs energy. Every breath of freezing air, every step through deep snow, every shiver that ripples through your muscles burns precious calories. The colder the world becomes, the harder your body works simply to keep your heart beating. And that creates a cruel trap. To survive the cold, you need food. To find food, you must leave the safety of your shelter. But every hour spent searching burns the very energy you're trying to replace. Winter wasn't just freezing your body. It was quietly emptying it. Modern survival experts call this an energy deficit. Your ancestors experienced it as something much simpler. They felt themselves becoming slower, hungrier, colder, every single day. That's why archaeologists often find evidence that the real work of surviving winter began long before winter itself. During the warmer months, people weren't simply eating because they were hungry. They were preparing for a season that hadn't arrived yet. Meat was sliced into thin strips and dried in the cold air. Fat, the most valuable source of energy, was carefully saved because gram for gram, It contains more than twice the calories of protein. Every piece of food represented another day that a child might live to see spring. Then there was fire. Most people imagine fire as humanity's greatest victory over winter. In reality, it was more like a fragile agreement. As long as the flames stayed alive, you had warmth, light, cooked food, and a chance to survive another night. The moment they died, everything changed. Richard Wrangham, whose research transformed our understanding of fire's role in human evolution, argues that mastering fire helped shape the very success of our species. But mastering it didn't mean controlling it. A fire demanded constant attention. Someone had to search for dry wood while snow buried fallen branches beneath ice. Someone had to protect the glowing embers from wind and rain. Someone had to wake before dawn to breathe life back into fading coals before the shelter turned into a freezer. The fire wasn't your servant. It was another responsibility. And sometimes it betrayed you. Too much smoke could reveal your camp to predators or to rival groups competing for the same scarce resources. A single spark could destroy carefully dried hides that had taken weeks to prepare. If freezing rain soaked your fuel, even experienced people could struggle to keep a flame alive. Suddenly, the most important object in the world was no bigger than your hand. A handful of glowing embers. Lose them, and the night became much longer. So, your ancestors learned another lesson. Don't fight winter. Outsmart it. Instead of trying to heat the open air, they learned to trap warmth where it mattered most. Archaeologists have uncovered remarkable Ice Age dwellings, built from mammoth bones, timber, hides, and packed earth. Some, like those found at Mezerik in present-day Ukraine, reveal astonishing engineering. Massive mammoth jaws and tusks formed sturdy frames, while thick hides created walls that blocked the relentless wind. They weren't beautiful. They weren't comfortable. But they worked. Then comes one of winter's strangest secrets. Snow, the very thing that seems determined to kill you, can also keep you alive. Fresh snow is filled with millions of tiny pockets of trapped air. Those pockets slow the escape of heat, making snow one of nature's most effective insulators. That's why snow shelters can remain dramatically warmer inside than the air outside. To someone who didn't understand the science, it would have seemed like magic. To your ancestors, it was simply another lesson learned through generations of trial, error, and survival. Because every winter taught the same harsh truth. Nature was never trying to help you, but if you learned its rules, you could sometimes make it work for you. The longer winter lasted, the less important strength became. Imagine two hunters. One is young, powerful, and can run farther than anyone else in the group. The other walks with a limp from an old injury. His best hunting days are behind him. Which one is more valuable? At first, the answer seems obvious. But winter has a way of changing the rules. The younger hunter knows how to throw a spear. The older hunter knows where the reindeer crossed the frozen river 3 winters ago. He remembers which valleys stay out of the wind. He knows which berries become poisonous after the first frost. He can look at the snow and tell whether the tracks ahead belong to a wolf that passed yesterday or an hour ago. In a world where one mistake could cost an entire family its life, knowledge was often worth more than muscle. Archaeologists have discovered something remarkable at prehistoric sites across Europe and the Middle East. Some skeletons belong to people who lived for years after suffering devastating injuries, shattered legs, crippled arms, severe disabilities, even illnesses that would have made hunting impossible. Alone, they would have died. But they didn't. Someone carried them. Someone shared food with them. Someone protected them when they couldn't protect themselves. Those bones tell a story that no written history ever could. Long before civilization, humans had already learned compassion. Not because it was noble, because it worked. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar argues that our greatest evolutionary advantage wasn't sharper teeth or stronger muscles. It was our ability to build large, stable social groups based on trust. Winter proved him right. A lone human is surprisingly fragile. A family is stronger. A tribe becomes something entirely different. When one hunter failed, another succeeded. When one fire went out, another camp still had burning embers. When one parent became sick, others cared for the children. Survival stopped being an individual achievement. It became a shared project. That may be the single greatest survival strategy our species ever invented. Not fire, not spears, not clothing, each other. And clothing itself tells another extraordinary story. Most people picture crude animal skins thrown over someone's shoulders. The archaeological evidence paints a far more sophisticated picture. Scientists have uncovered finely crafted bone needles dating back tens of thousands of years, complete with tiny, carefully drilled eyes almost identical in purpose to modern sewing needles.
That changes everything. A needle means tailored clothing. It means fitted sleeves instead of loose hides. It means boots that trap warm air around frozen feet. It means layered garments that stay warm even when the wind howls across an open plain. And air became the real insulation. The fur simply held it in place. Without realizing it, your ancestors had become engineers. Every stitch solved a problem. Every seam trapped another pocket of warmth. Every improvement meant one more child surviving until spring. Then there were the mammoths. Popular culture treats them like monsters. Your ancestors saw something very different. Opportunity. A fully grown woolly mammoth could weigh 6 tons or more. To a starving community, it wasn't just an animal. It was an entire season of survival walking across the snow. The meat fed families, the fat became precious fuel for the human body. The hides became roofs, blankets, and clothing. The bones became tools, shelters, spear shafts, and fuel where wood was scarce. Even the tusks became raw material for art, needles, ornaments, and hunting equipment. Almost nothing was wasted. Every successful hunt echoed through the months that followed. But hunting something that enormous required something no other predator possessed: planning, not for minutes, for days, sometimes weeks. The hunters had to study migration routes, understand the landscape, predict the wind, communicate silently, and trust that every member of the group would play their role at exactly the right moment. A lion depends on instinct. A human depends on imagination. You survive because your ancestors could picture a future that didn't exist yet and then work together to make it real. That ability changed everything, because by the end of the Ice Age, humanity wasn't just surviving winter anymore. Winter was quietly reshaping humanity itself. Winter did something no predator ever could. It rewrote the human story. When people think about evolution, they often imagine bigger muscles, sharper eyesight, or faster runners. But the Ice Age rewarded something far less obvious. It rewarded patience, planning, curiosity, the ability to learn from yesterday and prepare for tomorrow. Every winter acted like an examination. The people who ignored the warning signs disappeared. The people who adapted lived long enough to teach the next generation. Those lessons became traditions. Those traditions became culture. And over thousands of generations, culture became one of humanity's greatest survival tools. No other animal on Earth passes knowledge from one generation to the next with the same depth. A wolf pup learns by watching. A human child learns through stories, demonstration, imitation, and years of patient teaching. Every successful shelter, every improved spear, every better way to preserve food didn't disappear when one person died. It became part of a growing library carried inside the minds of the group. Long before books existed, humanity had already built its first civilization. It was made of memory. This may explain one of the greatest advantages our species ever developed. We don't have to rediscover survival every generation. We inherit it. Even today, your brain is constantly running ancient programs written in a world you've never seen. Why does a fire instantly feel comforting? Because for hundreds of thousands of years, it meant warmth, safety, cooked food, and another night alive. Why do cold winds make you instinctively pull your arms closer to your body before you even think about it? Because conserving heat once mattered more than comfort. Why do families across so many cultures gather together during the coldest months of the year? Because winter has always been easier to survive together than alone. These habits feel ordinary because they've been rehearsed for thousands of generations. Your body remembers what your mind has forgotten. Even modern psychology hints at this ancient inheritance. We naturally seek secure places when we feel threatened. We look for trusted companions during uncertainty. We feel calmer in warm, enclosed spaces than in cold, exposed ones. Those preferences aren't random. They're echoes of a world where the wrong choice could mean the difference between seeing another sunrise or becoming another forgotten ancestor beneath the snow. But perhaps the greatest misconception about ancient humans is that they were constantly fighting nature. They weren't. The people who survived didn't conquer winter. They had learned to live with it. They studied it. They respected it. They understood that every season followed patterns, that every animal left clues, that every mistake carried a lesson. Nature wasn't an enemy to defeat. It was a teacher that never accepted excuses. And slowly, generation after generation, humanity became its best student. Think about what that really means. Every warm home you've ever entered, every winter coat you've ever zipped up, every hot meal you've enjoyed while snow fell outside your window. Every one of those comforts is the latest chapter in a story that began long before cities, nations, or even history itself. The technology has changed. The instinct hasn't. The next time cold air catches your breath, pause for a moment. That uncomfortable sting on your skin is the same sensation your ancestors felt as they stepped out to search for food beneath an ice age sky. The difference is that you already know you'll return to warmth. They didn't. They walked into the unknown anyway. Not because they were fearless, not because they believed survival was guaranteed, but because the people they loved were waiting for them to come home. Most of their names are lost forever. No monuments mark the places where they endured those endless winters. No history book records the night a mother gave her last piece of food to her child. No museum can display the thousands of quiet decisions that kept one small family alive while countless others vanished. Yet those invisible victories became the foundation of everything that followed: empires, languages, science, art, music, civilization itself. And eventually, you. So the next time you step inside from the cold, close the door behind you and feel warmth slowly return to your hands. Remember this: you're not just escaping winter. You're completing a journey that began tens of thousands of years ago, when somewhere beneath an endless white sky, one ordinary family refused to let the cold write the final chapter of your story.
Smash that subscribe button and hit like right now. What hit different? Drop a comment, and I'll see you next time.